If you keep a gun in your car the wrong way, a simple traffic stop can turn into a serious legal problem in seconds. Not because you did something dangerous, but because you didn't understand one thing: how you store it. And how you handle that moment when an officer approaches matters more than most people realize. And here's the part that surprises people. It's not just about having a legal firearm. It's about how it's positioned, how it's accessed, and what you say when that conversation starts. Because in that moment, you're not just being pulled over, you're being evaluated. Let's put you right there. You're driving. Normal day, nothing unusual. Then, lights. Red and blue flash behind you. Instant tension. You pull over, hands on the wheel, trying to stay calm. Now here's the difference. In this scenario, there's a firearm in your vehicle, and whether this situation stays simple or turns into something much bigger depends on what happens next. The officer walks up, slow, observant, watching your hands, your movements, your behavior, because from their perspective, they don't know what's in that car. They don't know who you are. They're reading everything. And if anything feels off, the situation escalates fast. Now, most people make their first mistake before the officer even speaks. They start moving, reaching, adjusting things, trying to prepare. And that's dangerous, because sudden movement is one of the biggest triggers for escalation. So the first rule is simple. Once you pull over, you stop moving, hands visible, preferably on the steering wheel. No reaching, no digging, no adjustments, because control starts with stillness. Now the officer reaches your window. Cop. License and registration. This is a normal request, but this is where things matter. If your documents are near the firearm or require you to reach near it, you don't just move, you communicate calmly, clearly. Before you do anything, you say, "My documents are in the glove compartment. I'm going to reach for them." Now notice what you did. You didn't surprise them. You didn't move suddenly. You told them exactly what you're about to do. And that builds trust. It reduces tension. It keeps the situation stable. Now let's go deeper, because this is where most people don't understand the real issue. It's not just the presence of a firearm, it's accessibility. If something is easily reachable, quickly accessible, that changes how the officer sees the situation, because now it feels like a potential threat, even if you have no intention of using it. Perception matters more than you think. So how do you handle this correctly? You keep everything slow, predictable, visible, no sudden movements, no reaching across the car, no leaning unexpectedly, everything deliberate, everything controlled. Now here's another critical moment. The officer may ask, "Cop, is there anything in the vehicle I should know about?" This is where people panic. They over-explain, they talk too much, or they say something in the wrong way. And that's where problems begin, because your words shape the direction of the stop. So what do? You stay calm. You don't rush. You don't overreact. You respond clearly and simply. If disclosure is required where you are, you follow that requirement calmly. If it's not required, you don't volunteer unnecessary information, but either way, you never lie, because lying turns a manageable situation into a serious one instantly. Now let's look at the wrong way. Cop. Is there anything in the vehicle I should know about? Driver. Nervous. Yeah. There's a gun in there, but it's fine, it's legal, I didn't do anything. Too many words, too much emotion, too much explanation, and now the situation feels unstable, even if everything is legal. Now compare that to a controlled response. Calm tone, steady voice, minimal words, no panic, no over-explaining. That difference changes how the officer responds. Now let's take this further, because sometimes the officer may ask about it directly. Cop, do you have any weapons in the vehicle? This is a high-pressure moment. And again, your response matters. Not just what you say, but how you say it. You stay calm. You don't make sudden movements. You keep your hands visible. You respond clearly. No jokes, no sarcasm, no nervous laughter. Because anything that feels unpredictable raises tension. Now here's something most people never think about. Tone. If your voice shakes, if you speak too fast, if you sound defensive, that can create suspicion, even if everything is perfectly legal. So what do? You slow down, you breathe, you keep your tone steady, because control in your voice creates control in the situation. Now let's go into a more intense scenario. The officer becomes more cautious. Their posture changes. Maybe they step back slightly. Maybe they place their hand near their equipment. This doesn't mean you're in trouble. It means they're adjusting for safety. And this is where your behavior matters most. No sudden movement. No turning quickly. No reaching. You stay still. You follow instructions. Because at this stage, any unexpected action can escalate everything instantly. Now imagine the opposite. You move suddenly. You reach quickly. You don't communicate. And now, the officer reacts. Commands get louder. Tone gets sharper. Situation becomes tense. All because of movement, not intention. That's how fast things can change. Now, let's bring this back to structure, because this is what keeps you safe. You get pulled over, you stop, hands visible, no movement, officer approaches, you stay calm, you communicate before reaching, you move slowly, you keep everything visible, you answer clearly. No extra words, no emotional reactions, and because of that, the situation stays controlled. Now here's another mistake people make. They try to prove they're safe. They start explaining everything. I have a license. I always follow the law. I've never had a problem. None of that helps in the moment, because the officer isn't judging your history. They're assessing the present situation. Your behavior, your movement, your tone, that's what matters. So instead of explaining, you focus on staying controlled. Now let's talk about positioning, because this is critical. Where things are placed in your vehicle matters. If something is visible, that can change the interaction. If something is hidden, that can also change perception if discovered unexpectedly. This is why consistency and predictability are so important, because surprises create risk, and risk leads to escalation. Now let's pause here, because this part is important. This is not about avoiding the law. This is not about tricking anyone. This is about understanding how to move through a situation safely, because safety is the priority for everyone involved. Now let's go deeper into the conversation. Cop. Why do you have it in the car? This question can catch people off guard. They start explaining, talking too much, trying to justify, but again, too many words create risk. So what do? You stay simple. You stay calm. You don't over-explain, because your goal is not to convince. It's to stay controlled. Now let's build a full scenario. From start to this point, you're driving, you get pulled over, you stop safely, hands on the wheel, officer approaches, cop, license and registration. You. I'm going to reach for my wallet. Slow movement. Controlled, visible. Cop. Is there anything in the vehicle I should know about? You respond calmly. No panic, no extra words. Cop. Do you have any weapons in the vehicle? You stay composed. You answer clearly. No sudden movement, no emotional reaction. Now the officer understands the situation, and because you stayed calm, the situation stays manageable. But most people don't do this. They panic. They move suddenly, they talk too much, and that's where things go wrong. Now here's the key point. This entire situation is controlled by behavior, not just legality. Because even if everything is legal, bad behavior can create a bad outcome. But controlled behavior keeps things stable. Now imagine the opposite. You panic, you move quickly, you over-explain, you sound nervous, and suddenly the situation feels unpredictable. And when something feels unpredictable, it gets handled differently. That's the difference. That's what you need to understand. Now bring it back to the beginning. You're driving. You get pulled over. You know there's a firearm in your car. And in that moment, you don't panic. You don't react emotionally. You don't make sudden moves. You stay calm. You stay controlled because control is what keeps the situation from turning into something much bigger. And what happens next? That's where things can either stay simple or become complicated. And that's exactly what we're going to break down next. Now imagine this. You did everything right in the first few minutes. You pulled over safely, hands visible, no sudden movement. You spoke calmly. You didn't over-explain. You kept everything controlled. And because of that, the situation didn't explode immediately. But here's what most people don't understand. Just because things are calm doesn't mean the pressure is gone. This is where the interaction gets more serious. Because now the officer has processed the basics. They've seen your behavior, they've heard your tone, and now they decide what comes next. This is where many people start to slip. Not at the beginning, but right here. When they think it's almost over. Let's go back into it. You're sitting there, window down, hands still, officer standing just outside. Then the next question comes. Cop. Where is it located? That question hits differently, because now it's specific. And your instinct is to point, to show, to reach. That's the mistake. Because the moment you start reaching, even with good intentions, everything changes. From the officer's perspective, they don't know what you're about to grab. They don't know how fast you'll move. So what do? You don't move. You answer with words only. Clear. Simple. It's secured in the glove compartment. Or, it's in the trunk. Nothing more. No gestures. No leaning. No reaching. Because your hands staying visible is what keeps the situation stable. Now let's take it further. Because sometimes, the officer follows up. Cop. Is it loaded? Now you feel even more pressure. Because the questions are getting deeper, more specific, and this is where people start talking too much again. They explain everything, they add details that weren't asked, and that creates confusion. So what do? You stay within the question. Answer only what is asked. Nothing extra. No story, no explanation. Because every extra word is another chance for misunderstanding. Now here's where the situation can shift quickly. The officer gives a command. Cop. Do not reach for anything. This is not a suggestion. This is a safety command. And how you respond to this matters immediately. You don't talk over it. You don't explain. You don't say, I wasn't going to. You comply. Instantly. Hands still. Visible. Because hesitation here creates risk. Now let's escalate this scenario. Cop. Step out of the vehicle. This is a lawful command in many situations, and this is where some people make a serious mistake. They argue, they hesitate. They ask, why? That hesitation changes everything. So what do? You comply, slowly, carefully. Before moving, you can say, I'm going to open the door. Then you move. No sudden actions, no quick turns. You step out, hands visible. Now you're outside the car. And this is where the dynamic changes completely. You are more exposed, more observed, more controlled, and this is where your behavior matters even more. Because now, every movement is visible. Every reaction is noticed. If you turn suddenly, if you reach instinctively, if you act unpredictably, that creates immediate tension. So what do? You stay still. You follow instructions. You keep your hands where they can be seen. Now here's something critical. Once you're outside the vehicle, do not try to manage the situation with words. This is where people talk too much. They start explaining everything. I just keep it for safety. I wasn't doing anything. I always follow the law. None of that helps in this moment, because the officer isn't looking for your life story. They're looking at your behavior, your control, your compliance. So instead of talking, you stay calm. You stay quiet unless asked something directly. And when you are asked, you keep it simple. Now let's go deeper, because sometimes the officer may decide to secure the situation further. Cop. Where exactly is it? Don't move. Notice the command. Don't move. That means exactly what it says. So you respond verbally. It's in the center console, or wherever it is. No movement, no pointing, because even pointing can be misread. Now let's talk about something people don't consider. Your body language outside the vehicle. If you start shifting your weight, looking around nervously, moving your hands too much, that creates tension, even if you're doing nothing wrong. So what do? You stay steady. You keep your posture relaxed, but controlled. No sudden gestures. Because control in your body reflects control in the situation. Now let's take this further, because sometimes the officer may separate you from the vehicle, create distance, position you in a certain spot. This is about safety, and how you respond here is critical. You don't resist. You don't question aggressively. You follow instructions, because resistance, even small resistance, can escalate things immediately. Now imagine the opposite. You hesitate, you question, you move unpredictably, and suddenly, commands get louder, more officers become involved, and the situation becomes intense, all because of small reactions. Now let's bring everything together again. From the moment the stop began, to this exact point, every step was controlled by your behavior, not just the presence of a firearm, not just legality, but how you acted, how you spoke, how you moved. That's what kept things stable. Now let's talk about mindset again, because this is where people go wrong. They think they need to explain themselves, to prove they're safe, to prove they're legal. But that's not your role in that moment. Your role is to stay controlled, because control prevents escalation. Now let's run a full clean version. From start to finish, you're driving. You get pulled over, you stop safely. Hands on the wheel. No movement, officer approaches. Cop, license and registration. You, I'm going to reach for my wallet. Slow movement, controlled. Cop, is there anything in the vehicle I should know about? You respond calmly. No panic, no over-explaining. Cop, where is it located? You, it's secured in the glove compartment. Hands still. Cop, do not reach for anything. You comply immediately, no hesitation. Cop, step out of the vehicle. You, I'm going to open the door. Slow movement, you step out. Hands visible. You stand calmly. No sudden movement, no unnecessary talking. Now everything stays stable. No escalation, no confusion, because every step was controlled. Now imagine the opposite. You panic, you move quickly, you talk too much, you hesitate, and suddenly, the situation becomes unpredictable, and unpredictable situations get handled differently. That's the difference. That's what you need to understand. This is not about avoiding anything. This is about safety, for you, for the officer, for everyone involved, because in these moments, safety comes from control, and control comes from awareness. Now bring it back to the key idea. There is no perfect setup that protects you by itself. No trick, no shortcut. What protects you is how you behave in that moment, how you speak, how you move, how you respond under pressure. Because when that pressure hits, you don't rise to the moment. You fall to your preparation. So the next time you see those lights in your mirror, next time your heart starts racing, next time your mind goes into overdrive, remember this. Stay still, stay calm, say less, move slow, and never let panic take control of a situation, where control is the only thing that keeps it from getting worse.